Clean Air Task Force, CATF for short, is a technology-forward NGO focused on catalyzing solutions for climate change. So we work globally. We have advocacy teams on multiple continents. And the way we're kind of structured is we are split into a distinct technology-specific programs, or climate solution-specific programs. So we have a nuclear program, a carbon capture program, methane reduction, land use, transportation, that kind of thing. I sit on our super hot rock geothermal program.
Welcome to Geothermal Unleashed, where we will explore the cutting edge of geothermal energy. I'm Elizabeth Cambry from the Valorec New Energies team, and I'm here to help educate and document geothermal's rise in the global energy transition. Today, we have Jenna Hill joining us. She is the geoscientist and geothermal liaison at the Clean Air Task Force. So she is located in Portland, Maine. She is a geothermal enthusiast, and she's also an avid skier. And she skis a lot on the East Coast, and she was telling me she recently participated in a pond skimming contest. Maybe she'll share a little bit about what happened with that. But today we're going to talk about the initiatives at the Clean Air Task Force to drive geothermal globally. So why don't we start, Jenna, with you introducing yourself. Give us a little background about your experience skiing, your career, how you got into geothermal, and how you came to working at the Clean Air Task Force.
Sure, absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on. It's a real honor, particularly given the leaders in the geothermal space who've been on this podcast in the past. I loved the episode with Torsten, with Greg, with Merritt, with Blake from 400C Energy. All of those have been fantastic. So I just wanted to start there. Thanks so much for having me. Yeah. So, and another thing, I think the pond skimming contest. In case you're wondering, I did not make it across the pond, so unfortunately, I have to break that news.
Did
But
anyone make it across the pond, I guess is the
yeah,
question. Really?
people did, but not myself, so I did get soaked.
At least you tried.
Yeah. Yeah, starting from the beginning, growing up, I grew up in the mountains, and I spent a lot of time outdoors. I was really closely connected to the environment. And as I was growing up, I spent a lot of time outside, and I remember noticing whenever there's a TV segment on climate or environment, um, there were never any solutions. There were never any solutions focused pieces of that. There was never any segment on, okay, so this is the problem. Here's what we should do about it. Here's what we can do about it. Here are the solutions. And so it increasingly became important to me to work in a space where I can work on pragmatic climate solutions. So when I went to university, I studied geology and with some energy policy mixed in there. And then after that, I transitioned to working at the Maine Geological Survey, and then I ended up working for an environmental engineering firm called Arcadis for several years. And what I did there was I was working in the field on some drill rigs, and then transitioned to subsurface kind of 3D digital modeling. And that's what really opened up the innovation side of things to me. So I started working on their digital innovation. I fell in love with innovation. And I took a step back though, and I realized I wanted to really be on the front end of energy solutions, of climate solutions. So I was living in the US at the time, and then I moved over to Iceland to get my graduate degree, specifically in geothermal. And and while I was there, I got the opportunity to meet a lot of really inspiring people who are at the cutting edge of geothermal innovation and high temperature geothermal work. So folks working at the Kraftwerk Magma testbed and Iceland Deep Drilling Project, and that really inspired me. Uh, my thesis ended up being focused on putting together a decision-making tool for deep geothermal drilling, and all that I think maybe sounds somewhat technical, but really it's not. The through line has been more what is the system that exists today and how can we be creative about improving that system. So when I was graduating from Iceland, I it was around the same time where when CATF was setting up their super hot rock geothermal program, and my work at CATF, it's evolved over the past few years, but it's really allowed me to work in this space where I can be kind of creative about what needs to happen and really spend time talking to experts, the people who are actually leading the real work, doing the real work on the ground, and understanding where we can create solutions. So yeah, that's where I am today.
Okay, so can you talk now a little bit, this is for our listeners who are not aware, about the Clean Air Task Force, the mission, and the significance that they're playing in the clean energy sector in general?
Yeah, happy to. So, Clean Air Task Force, CATF for short, is a technology forward NGO focused on catalyzing solutions for climate change. So we work globally. We have advocacy teams on multiple continents, and the way we're kind of structured is we are split into a distinct technology specific programs, or climate, I should say climate solution specific programs. So we have a nuclear program, a carbon capture program, methane reduction, land use, transportation, that kind of thing. I sit on our super hot rock geothermal program.
So I'm just curious. I didn't realize the Clean Air Task Force touched that many sectors. So would you say that the Super Hot Rock program gets as much attention as the other sectors do within the Clean Air Task Force?
Yeah, I mean, so one thing I'll say is some of these programs have existed for a long time at Clean Air Task Force, and some of them are newer. So, um, it, it, I, it's hard to really answer that question. But what I will say is that geothermal as a whole is something that people at CATF are really excited about. And I don't think that's just because I'm biased. I really think it's something that has some unique potential, and it's growing quickly. So it's an exciting thing to be a part of.
So you know what I often hear is that Clean Air Task Force is the loudest voice in the room when it comes to super hot rock. I'm just very curious. How did the Clean Air Task Force become such an advocate for super hot rock technology?
Sure, yeah. So in order for a technology to be the subject of a program at CATF, it has to meet two criteria. It has to have some kind of lack of advocacy around it, and it has to be uniquely transformative. Super Hot Rock fits both of these. So I think a stat that maybe we hear a lot is something like 0.01% of the total heat in the earth this minute could provide for humanity's energy needs for something like 2 million years. And the geothermal is a fantastic resource for the cities and the communities that live near naturally occurring pockets of shallow hydrothermal fluid. But what we're trying to do is answer the question, how do we maximize the potential of accessing this really vast resource at a global scale, at a scale that's meaningful? And so super hot rock, the way to do that is two things. The answer to that is two things. So one is energy density, and the second piece is geography. So the energy density piece is somewhat simple, I think. Modeling that's come out of demonstration projects like the Iceland Deep Drilling Project, first iteration of it, and the Japan Supercritical Project tells us that there is a step change in energy density when you go from below 374 degrees Celsius to above 374 degrees Celsius. And this step change is significant. So that's something that changes the equation a bit. But the next piece, which is equally important, if not more important, is the geography piece. And brilliant startups like XGS, Ever, Mazama, Quays, Fervo, GA Drilling are working to kind of unlock this piece. And there are two different ways to do this. One is debugging this deep drilling piece
Okay.
so that we can access heat economically at a lower technology risk in more parts of the world. And the next piece is the hot dry rock piece, which when I say hot dry rock, I'm talking about both enhanced geothermal systems and closed loop or systems or AGS. And both of those things are very important advancements for geothermal as a whole and opening up the technology as a resource globally.
Okay, so I'm really curious to learn more about what you specifically do at Clean Air Task Force. Can you share with us, what you do, what projects you're focused on, and maybe kind of paint a picture of what your a day in the life of Jenna Hill looks like?
Yeah, well, it's always changing.
Okay.
What I will say is my work is probably most easily could be most easily categorized into three branches.
Okay.
One is technology road mapping. The second is European policy specifically for geothermal.
Okay.
And the third is global strategy around global collaboration. So because super hot rock is a technology where the leaders are in many cases very different parts of the world, it's really important that we get those folks together in one place and collaborating. So that's the third branch of what I work on. But in practice, what that looks like on day to day changes really. And I'm happy to talk about projects in kind of any of those categories. But I think, I think what we'll find during the course of our conversation is there's actually quite a lot of overlap between those three things.
Yeah, let's start. Okay, but first, before we go on, I do want to hear, like, what does the day look like? Are you traveling? Do you go to conferences? Describe to us what a general day looks like.
Yeah. So something that I'm spending a lot of time on right now is well, yeah, something I'm spending a lot of time on right now is a technology road mapping report, and that's an outcome of the summit we had in Hawaii that I was really lucky to have you and folks from your team
Yeah.
at actually. And what that looks like is so I guess taking a step back is a really critical part of the DNA of our program is making sure that we are continually collaborating with, learning from the actual technology leaders in the space, the folks who are doing the work, whether that be research groups, public or private, universities, national labs, or it also could be startups, service companies, the whole kind of range of these kinds of stakeholders. It's really important that we're working with them so that we are aware of not only the things the goals that they have, the things that they think have potential, but also what challenges they're facing, what their needs and priorities are. So,
So, oh, sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
oh, you should go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, going because you mentioned the Super Hot Rock Summit that was in Hawaii that I think I was in your group for a portion of the day. I
Yes.
I was so impressed by that summit. It was so well organized, and maybe just to paint a picture, and you can fill in, but all of the folks in the Super Hot Rock space were invited to this, and we sat down and we identified roadmaps of the technology gaps. And then there was speakers that talked about what they were facing within their own projects. But it felt like this initiative was Clean Air Task Force is really trying to close this big gap of the technology that we need, put a roadmap into place, and are really driving it forward. And I've just never experienced something like that before, where there is an organization that's really trying to drive a new industry forward and do it very quickly. So I applaud you and your team. I thought it was very well orchestrated, very professionally done. And everyone walked away with just like great things to say about that experience. So I just wanted to share that.
That's so refreshing, and that's really great to hear. Um, or I really appreciate that. It was really fantastic to be able to be in the room with so many brilliant people and learn from so many brilliant people. Something that I really like about working at Clean Air Task Force is we're continually measuring ourselves against, is this the most effective thing we can be doing today to
Yeah.
move the industry forward, to move this work forward, to make sure we can make the most impact possible on climate. And that's something we do quarterly is we take a look at everything that we're doing. Our program looks at everything that we're doing and we ask ourselves, is this the most effective thing we could be doing? Yeah, it's a refreshing thing to be able to do. And it keeps, it keeps me really motivated to know that what we're doing is the best thing we can be doing in terms of hopefully moving the industry
Yeah.
forward. But it was so helpful to have your team and everyone who was there. And then to give background on that,
Yeah.
we what we it's really helpful in our advocacy work to instead of just be talking at a high level about you should be supporting geothermal innovation, you should be supporting super hot rock, to okay, these are the specific gaps, these are specific technology areas. This is what potentially is being left behind, and these are where the focuses need to be. And in order to do that, what we decided to do is we took a look at the super hot rock geothermal system as a whole, and we split it into 5 distinct technology categories. So site characterization, drilling, heat extraction, well construction and design, and power production. And there's a lot of overlap between those categories. But what we did was then we hired independent experts to take a look at each of these categories. So we had somebody write a report on drilling specifically. We had someone write a report on well construction design and answer the question, where is the technology today? Where does it need to be in order to um, where does it need to be, and what needs to happen to get it there? And what these experts did is they broke each piece of the technology down into equipment, things like equipment, methods, materials, and really mapped it out in a somewhat granular way. And then what we did was we used reports, the findings of these reports to build out the summit. And then we brought targeted experts in the space, so folks working in super hot rock geothermal and next generation geothermal, um, and showed the results, asked where are we wrong, what do we need to be adding here, and um, yeah, and then we had 2 days of strategy sessions and worked out kind of okay, these are the gaps. These are the priorities of the gaps, and I'm happy to talk more about how we kind of prioritize those. And here's kind of the roadmap or strategy around how we should be collaborating to fill these gaps. And that was really ultimately the purpose of the summit.
Yeah. So then now are you working on drafting an overall report from the summit? Is that what you were speaking about earlier? Is
Yeah, so we have since then we put together a synthesis report because it's tough to digest all of that
Yeah.
at once. And then right now what I'm working on is a technology road mapping report. So the last part of the summit, each of these kind of we had a few roundtables, and the outcome of the roundtables is each of them kind of put together what do we think the roadmap to development for each of these categories is. And so what I'm doing now is taking a look at these roadmaps, looking putting them together, looking for themes, looking for kind of actions and ideas that came out of the group of experts that we spoke with, and holding some structured interviews based on the findings there, and putting together a technology road mapping report that puts together recommendations for how we can come together and collaborate on this. Um, And this is something that bleeds into the global collaboration work that I do. The first step that came out of this roadmap, I'll give you a review, is putting together a global steering committee for the development of these technologies that has representatives from each of these leading countries, from the Japan Supercritical Project, from Iceland, from Norway, etc. So CATF is, in parallel to writing this report, also working with the International Energy Agency to actually make this a reality. And we had some really good news last week that this was approved.
Wow,
So
list. That's great.
yeah, so it's, I'm happy to talk about that as well, but don't
Yeah.
want to go too far. But yeah, I'm very excited about the technology roadmap, and that's an example of something that I work on a day-to-day basis is meeting with experts saying, okay, this is what I have, this is what I understand from the summit. Is this, would you change this at all? Do you kind of agree with this process? Does this make sense? And that's a good example of something I might do in a given day.
So is this a report that you anticipate will be published and available in 2025?
Yes. It should be published this fall.
Okay, that's great. Okay, so with the committees, just from my understanding, because I definitely want to follow this, so there will be committees around the globe that will be focused on each of the five categories that you mentioned, and are they going to help drive some of the roadmaps, or what will they be?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So, the way we've structured, so the International Energy Agency, the IEA, for folks who aren't as familiar with it, they have a dedicated geothermal program. It's called the Geothermal Technology Collaboration Program, and has membership from a series of countries, US, Germany, New Zealand, Italy, etc. And uh, the way that they get work done is through working groups. So, yeah, through working groups. So they call these working groups tasks. So what we did is submit a proposal for a task specifically focused on super hot rock geothermal in low permeability and dry rock conditions, and um, immediately several countries have already committed to engaging in this effort, including Norway, Italy, New Zealand, Iceland. I believe there is one more, and there are a few that will start to join as we kind of put the structure together. But what it'll look like is a steering committee that helps guide, like, what are the KPIs, what are the goals for this group. They'll be appointing a task leader in the interim. CATF will be acting as kind of a task leader to help make sure this gains momentum. And if we get adequate resources, we'll be able to kind of do more with this. But some of the things that we will be doing regardless is we'll be setting up. We'll be bringing in site-specific project teams from each of the member countries. So these are project teams who have active projects already in the ground or in the lab space in super hot rock. So these are the project teams who will be using this as a resource. There will also be advisory boards for each of these technology verticals, and we're calling them technology interest groups. But really, what the purpose of them is that if, say, the project in New Zealand is hitting some kind of roadblock, and say the roadblock has to do with some specific part of the drilling process. They can then go to the task leader, and the task leader can convene the drilling specific advisory board to meet with the site specific project team in New Zealand to help give them advice and work through the whatever issue they may have. And the technology interest groups, these advisory boards, will have representatives from each of these projects and countries. And then the the last piece of this is the data sharing and data management piece. So if we are able to get adequate resources, my hope is that we can leverage the data management resources that are already embedded in the IEA.
Yeah.
That the site-specific project teams will have access to a platform where they can share their data. And we also are on the side already working to convene these groups kind of on a quarterly basis so that they're able to share their learnings, share their challenges, share upcoming opportunities. They're able to build off of each other's work instead of kind of working in silos.
Wonderful. That is so exciting. Okay, so that is just a third of what you do is this technology roadmap. So there's a lot that goes into that. Let's turn to dive into a little bit more about it's the European policy that you mentioned as the second kind of bucket. Okay, talk a little bit about what you do with that.
Well, I think my role really, I'm the elephant in the room is that I'm an American. But what I really do is I rely quite a bit on we have a really deep um, and brilliant European policy team that works both on the EU level and on the country level, member state level, in Central Eastern Europe and in other countries throughout Europe. And when we think about my role is to understand challenges in the region and understand potential resources and then bring that to those policy folks so then they can do the advocacy that's informed by the things that the program has found in our own work. And so in 2025, we have two major priorities when it comes to European policy, and that is influencing funding instruments and influencing and ensuring there is a geothermal action plan. So the European Commission kind of informally committed to releasing a geothermal action plan that puts out a strategy for geothermal development throughout Europe. So this would influence all of its member states. And it's committed to doing this uh, in Q1 of 2026. So one
Okay.
thing we want to do is make sure that that does actually happen, that they do release a geothermal action plan because it's not something that we can wait on, and that that action plan includes a strategy for geothermal innovation and includes super hot rock, includes things like EGS, closed loop, is forward thinking and isn't just restricted to conventional geothermal, which also is very important. But we want to make sure that this is an action plan that is also forward thinking and centering innovation. And so those are our two major priorities, funding instruments that can help de-risk these early stage projects um, and the action plan.
So what is an example of a funding instrument that can help de-risk a geothermal project?
Well, a really critical one when you look at the history of super hot rock geothermal has been Horizon Europe. So when you think about the all of the past super hot rock geothermal demonstration projects, when you think GEMX, GEMX in Mexico, but coordinated through Germany in part, Descramble in Italy, the Iceland Deep Geoing Project. There are actually quite a few of them, more than I should probably take up time naming. Nearly all of them were supported by this Horizon funding opportunity. And this is something that rolls out every few years, every 7 years actually. And so in 2027, it will refresh. And we want to make sure, it's really important to us to make sure that that is still including geothermal and geothermal innovation and super hot rock geothermal as one of its priorities, because this is something that has been really fundamental to even the invention of super hot rock. These first projects are what came out of it. So this is direct funding. Of course, there's kind of a range of how you can use funding instruments to de-risk work. We see the capital cost of drilling as a big barrier for geothermal as a whole, but particularly these earlier stage technologies with a higher technology risk. So having funding instruments that can either be grants or cost share programs, or then taking it, a step back and maybe they're subsidized loans, or maybe they're convertible guaranteed loans, or maybe taking a step back once the technology matures and maybe this looks more like a public insurance program. These are all things that can be helpful, I think, actually for the whole geothermal ecosystem, not necessarily
Yeah.
just super hot.
Okay, so we talked about technology roadmap. We talked about your efforts within the European policy. Do remind me, what is the third bucket of?
The third one is global collaborations. That actually we ended up covering our major work stream there.
Okay,
Well, the two work streams are bringing these projects together
okay,
and the IEA piece. Yeah.
okay. That's fabulous. Okay, I didn't know all of this. I think this is very exciting. You have a very exciting job, and I love that you've got so much global presence. So I am just curious, of all of the things that we've discussed, what do you consider to be the biggest challenge when you're working so endlessly to promote super hot rock? What is the biggest challenge that you face?
I think that, and maybe you agree on this, a big challenge we see for next generation geothermal innovation as a whole is the language we use, the consistency in language.
Why does
So,
this impact things so dearly?
yeah, because in order to really have a wider impact. It's an easy thing to forget when we're working within our smaller geothermal community with folks who are working on geothermal every day who kind of already know the language. But when we want to make an impact with policymakers or with journalists or energy professionals who are considering focusing maybe more on geothermal, but they don't really they need to kind of know more, it's difficult to have language that is maybe it varies quite a bit. So I think a good example is closed loop versus advanced geothermal systems. And we also have enhanced and engineered geothermal systems and hot dry rock and next generation geothermal. And supercritical geothermal and super hot rock. All of those words I think can be really intimidating for folks who may be high impact decision makers, but they're trying to understand more about geothermal. So something that CATF has done in the past and something we have on our website is we've put together a dictionary to help kind of clear up this language. But I
Okay.
think there's certainly more that we can do um, as a kind of sector to make sure that we are, we can be straightforward in our messaging and getting the message of geothermal out into the world.
So where is this dictionary? Where does it sit? Is something that I can put a link in the notes to this podcast so people can have access to it, or is it?
Yes, it's on the Clean Air Task Force website.
Okay.
If you go to there's a place where you can go to our list of programs. If you go to the Super Hot Rock
Okay.
website, I can send you a link
Yeah,
after.
let's include it. I didn't realize that you guys had a dictionary. I think that would be great to just put the word out to everyone that that exists, and we can share that. Okay, so I'm going to just conclude with one last question. So I imagine at the Clean Air Task Force, you need to stay abreast of technology that could have an impact on super hot rock. And I'm just really curious. I mean, with all of the things that you're focused on, how does your team um, stay ahead of technology advancements and make sure that they've got the latest technology because super hot rock requires the latest and the greatest because the challenges that you're up against are really hot.
Yeah. What I'll say is we wouldn't be able to do the work we do without relationships with research groups, companies, all the stakeholders pushing the boundaries in this space. So, what I would say is the most important thing that we are able to do is convene stakeholders, have things like the Super Hot Rock Summit we were talking about earlier. These sort of convenings we've had where we're able to get down to the nitty gritty, really talk about, okay, what are you seeing? What are the needs? Where should we be heading? Is incredibly important for the work that we do. It's also nice to be at a place where we have a lot of technical expertise on staff within Clean Air Task Force, even outside of my program. I remember when we were working on the power production Bridging the Gaps report, one of the reports I mentioned, I had access to there was a power plant engineer that within CATF that I could work with to make sure we were getting things right. And we're also really committed um to not being afraid to be technical and get into the technical piece of all of this.
I love it. Do you think there'll be another Super Hot Rock Summit?
I'm sure there will be. Yes.
Be there. Hope it's in Hawaii. Well, I want to thank you so much, Jenna, for joining me and joining the listeners on this episode of Geothermal Unleashed. I really hope that today's discussion has sparked new insights and deepened everyone's understanding of the geothermal industry's incredible potential. Until next time, keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible, and let's continue working together to unleash the full potential of geothermal. Thank you.
Thanks.